Hi everyone, hope everyone is doing well. This is the Canadian Foreign Policy Hour, which is a critical look at Canada's role abroad, weekly, every Monday night, 6 p.m. Coming to you from Georgiage, which has long been a meeting place of various First Nations, otherwise known as Montreal. And I'm Me Vingler, and there is lots of developments in Canadian foreign policy this week. First thing, I read a very good academic article from Tamanisha John, who is a professor at York. She's, I think, originally from Florida, um, on capitalism, global militarism, and Canada's investment in the Caribbean. And it goes over a bunch of just the influence Canada's had in the Caribbean. Quite a few interesting nuggets in there. In Guyana, a speech at the Parliament in Guyana about Canadian imperialism back in 71, playing off Canadian versus US imperialism and other imperialism in Guyana. Um, a whole bunch of stuff on Canada's repeated military missions in the Caribbean, in Haiti, but also in the former British colonies. Worth taking a look at. The Globe and Mail business section, sorry, the report on business. No, what's it called? I forget what it's called. It's like the monthly or bi-monthly magazine. That's a supplement in the Globe and Mail that came with the weekend edition this week. They um, they have a piece. The front page piece is about uh, Garda World, the the Montreal-based private security company, which is pretty. It's not really that interesting from some elements of Canadian foreign policy, um, because Garda World is huge. It's a huge private security company, 132,000 employees, according to this article, around the world. It's been involved in Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan. It's got a whole kind of like mercenary-ish side to it, but it's also just kind of more, Garda World security at some of the malls and the banks and whatever here in Montreal. Uh, but this story was about this sort of elite, this wealthy security um, offering they have, and it was this journalist who did I guess did went through the this was clearly a PR exercise by the company. He went through what their how they would treat their their top level the people they're like providing security for, these like wealthy, and apparently this unit now has 200 billionaires, 200 billionaires that Garda World provides some form of protection for. Some, and it's like I think quite a variation of scale. Some of it's just sort of like updates on like the security situation in that country where you may be operating, but then it goes all the way up to like actually providing kind of like bodyguards. Uh, there's lots to unpackage in there. I mean, what kind of world are we in where there's, I mean, whatever, we know this is one more example, but the super wealthy have these added, and it kind of one of the things in the story is that it's sort of like a bodyguard, but it's as much a personal assistant. And they, supposed to learn how to like what kind of latte you want and whatever, right? So it's I guess they usually would be like a former military or police person who kind of accompanies you everywhere and does some mix of security and personal assistant. But Garda World's an important company in Canadian foreign policy that doesn't get that much attention. A Vancouver company, there's a bunch of stories all over international media, has put in an application with the Trump administration for seabed mining off the Pacific, and this is a real the conservation groups are really uh, uh, against this. This would be, I think, like the first time there would be this kind of seabed mining, and it goes against the convention, which I'm forgetting the name of it right now. And so again, it's a Canadian company, and Canadian companies have been at pushing this all over. Of course, mining companies are, forefront of the world. They're pushing going up to the moon and, getting trying to get minerals from the moon, but also from the bottom of the sea. And we'll see if the Trump administration okays this. The Globe had a piece about Trudeau apparently was set to make a trip to Syria, right? March 1st, and I think they said that got canceled for some reason, and then March 7th. And he would have been, I think, this article said, I think the first G7 leader to go. I'm not sure if any other countries' leaders have gone, but there's definitely been some foreign ministers. So this was understood to be a really controversial visit, but apparently Trudeau was keen on it. But it basically scheduling things and conflict with the U.S. kind of pushed it back, and apparently they tried really hard, which is fascinating because that means that he was really, into it ideologically. And of course, this is an organization that's still listed as a terrorist organization by the Canadian government that he would have gone to meet with. That's speaks to a degree of involvement and I guess commitment to ousting Assad that is fairly stark. David Suzuki has this piece on Rabble this week, where one of the things he says in this piece, and it's half of it's about criticizing the Koch, how we pronounce them, Koch brothers, the oil, right-wing oil people in the States. But he says Canada is caught between two superpowers, the United States and Russia. Uh, and it's like, not really. No, that's not true. I don't, David, like it just speaks to how much someone like Dave Suzuki, who I actually think is, quite good, right? He's moved in a very good direction from like kind of where he started. He had been and he was signed some Haiti petitions from Canadian Foreign Policy Institute, signed some, from No Fighter Jet. He's clearly somebody, there's an interview back 10 years ago, whatever, in Globe Mail, where someone asked, like, if you had a bunch of money, what would who you would give it to? And it was like some group that would come up with a alternative model to capitalism. So Suzuki's definitely someone like, I think he doesn't necessarily come from what I mean, I don't know, a traditional left background, but clearly gone into, pretty left-wing kind of world. But he's still really like, clearly, Russia is this danger. Russia's this, follows whatever, dominant geopolitics. Um, Unfortunate, and it's on Rabble, right? He didn't have to say that. It's not like Rabble wasn't going to publish him if he didn't join the follow the Western geopolitical perspective kind of angle. So it's really it's due to his own personal commitment. Uh, there was um, John Clark has this thing in response to this nationalism, these two kind of memes with that actor, famous Vancouver actor, considered very good looking. I'm forgetting his name right now. Him and like a image of Canada, and then saying something like, everywhere in the world, people are happy to see the Canadian flag or something like that. And it's this real nationalist kind of whatever. And John Clark says this toxic nationalism is revolting. A trip to one of the countries that have been set upon by predatory Canadian mining companies would be an instructive experience. Whatever is behind this little offering should try walking through the streets in Haiti, waving a Canadian flag, and see how popular that gesture would be. And it's really true, right? I mean, I think that this nationalism that is spiking, it goes off into all kinds of terrain that's just totally blind to or indifferent, obviously to um, here in terms of the dispossession genocide against indigenous people, but also in terms of just really concretely this notion of, traveling the world with a Canadian pin on your backpack kind of idea. There's a bunch of places. I mean, Haiti would be the prime example that you would not get people being like, "Oh, so wonderful, you're Canada," right? It really is. It's just that's just not the perception of Canada and Haiti. And that would Haiti would be on the extreme end, but that would hold in lots of places. If you go to the West Bank and you kind of like wander around with Canadian flag, people aren't going to like appreciate that you have, that's just and certainly in lots of communities in Guatemala, Ecuador, there's many places where Canadian mining companies, many African countries as well, where you would find that it's not that kind of thinking is not widespread. On the foreign interference question this week, this whole anti-China thing, this has really blown up. The uh, the Paul Chang, who is a sitting Toronto candidate, I'm forgetting what riding he's in, what the name of the riding is. He said a few days ago, which was quoted in a Chinese paper, something to the effect. He made a joke, basically saying that his opponent, this Joe Tai, who has a $100,000 or so wanted, I don't know what you call it. The word is bounty, but you want if you in any information on this person to get this person's arrest by the Hong Kong administration. And he made this joke, the Liberal sitting MP, about his conservative opponent that anyone can get this money if they brought him down to the Chinese consulate, something to that effect. It's clearly in bad taste. I don't I don't know enough about what this Joe Tai's done or not done, but obviously this is not really. I mean, you know the guy's running in Canadian elections, take him to the embassy or the consulate in another country to get some money to have the guy put in jail. It's not a very tasteful joke, whatever. But they're whipping it up. It's just like completely snowball. So the Globe today's is the headline is calls mount for Carney to drop Toronto area candidate. Um, and Jenny Kwan from the NDP came out saying that he's got to go. So it's both the Conservatives and the NDP pushing it. So far, Carney's sticking by him. Now, the I agree it's not a good joke. I think he should apologize. He did apologize. Uh, the contrast though with Michael Barrett, who's the conservative MP, who about 6 months ago in the House of Commons, in response to Heather McPherson and NDP foreign critic viewed as pro-Palestinian in that world, kind of mocking her as being pro-terrorist. He made a joke about did I hear a pager go off? Right? Uh, this sort of joke about I don't know, is it alluding to blowing her up? Is it alluding? Is it just what exactly you want to make of the joke? More untasteful than this joke, but basically nothing, right? The NDP asked for it to be withdrawn. There's no campaign for the MP to be ousted. There's no, and it just speaks to how and if you look at how this is playing out, this is all the anti-China, National Endowment for Democracy, Canadian government funded groups, all these sort of like Chinese diaspora groups, or that's how they present themselves at least. They all like jump in and demand oh, this is horrible. This is transnational repression, all this kind of whatever. Right now, Israel blowing people up in Lebanon with pagers, including kids. Is that transnational repression? Is that something that, and all kinds of people who've been targeted in Canada by different ways in which either the Israeli embassy, consulate, and the Israel lobby in Canada have targeted people, and them was that transnational repression? Like what's viewed as transnational repression? Anyway, so we'll see if he ends up buckling. To me, it's I don't agree. I don't think it's a good joke. I don't. I don't think there's any need to defend him. But whether he gets turfed is going to be because of the xenophobic climate. Now, there's kind of some interesting commentary on this online. So this one poster, pro-Conservative Party, she says Joe Tai has made himself a target by fighting to represent Canadians, meaning as a Conservative candidate, in a riding riddled with foreign interference. I thought that was a good formulation, a riding riddled with foreign interference. Now, what does that mean, of course? What is she saying? Is that mean a riding with lots of Chinese Canadians? Is that what a riding riddled with foreign interference means? Like, could you imagine saying that like Hampstead at Côte Saint-Luc in Montreal, which is we got Mayor Levy, who is Israel, 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 and we say that's a riding. What's the word in here? Riding riddled with foreign interference. Um, but anyway, so that's kind of the language. But even that's some sort of like right wing influence or an X. But even how Polyev was quoted in the Globe in this piece uh, uh, says, given that China has murdered our people, taken our people hostage, how is he ever going to stand up to foreign interference? This is actually referring to this isn't a story. It's not actually referring to the candidate. This is referring to Carney in his story. The headline: Carney rejects boosting China trade ties. So, but the way Poilievre's formulation, it's almost like the word like foreign interference is China, right? That is the formulation, which is how it is actually presented. But there's a sort of degree of like straddling the line in terms of how that formulation. So Carney in this story he backs away. So uh, Polyev attacks Carney for there was a loan from a China bank, China National Bank, some state owned. I think most of the banks are state owned in China. To Brookfield Asset when he was the head of Brookfield Asset. And then Carney made a visit where he met with President Xi, at some point. I'm not sure exactly when. And so he's hammering Carney on that on his connections to China. And on I guess shifting gears, Jason Kenney had a post about Ukraine where he says, outrageous that Canada stopped sharing radar sat images with Ukraine. As Minister of Defense in 2015, I overcame bureaucratic resistance to provide Ukraine with real-time, high-resolution radar satellite images. Then President Poroshenko told me that this intel played a critical role, quote unquote, in battles that turned back Putin's forces in the spring of 2015. So you have Kenny boasting about the Canadian intelligence support to the Ukrainian military that was used in this sort of civil war that obviously did have. I don't think that Russia was just totally hands off, but it was, I think, spurred by actual dissent in the Donbass to what had happened with Yanukovych and the massacre in Odessa and other things. Uh, so he's boasting about this Canada's radar sat right from early on, 2015, providing important support for um, uh, for Ukrainian military. And the New York Times published this piece, America's hidden role in Ukrainian military operations against Russia's invading armies, which just details a whole bunch more, just all the ways in which the U.S., particularly with intelligence, has been right at the center of fighting Russia. And now, I mean, the idea it hasn't been a proxy war for a long time is ridiculous, but this is just like one more extensively detailed establishment source evidence of just the scope of U.S. role and CIA, all kinds of involvement beyond what was sort of been openly stated previously of just how involved the U.S. And I'm sure if we ever find out the full story about Canada too, I'm sure we'll find out there's the role of intelligence, the role of communication security establishment, the role of JTF2, diplomats, all kinds of other stuff that hasn't been properly detailed. I guarantee we'll find out so much more Canadian involvement than is widely understood. Um, the the premier of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe, has this funny thing about U.S. plan will fund deaths of Ukrainians. So the premier of Saskatchewan, who I guess has been very soft on Trump, is how he's perceived by the NDP in Saskatchewan over the past couple months. He came out really hard against the U.S. plan to basically allow fertilizer, more Russian fertilizer to be sold internationally. And him coming out hard on that, and he frames it all as this is like basically going to kill Ukrainians because it's going to, more resources for Russia, and they're going to use it to occupy and kill Ukrainians, all that. So that, there's a line of logic to that argument, but it's like, so the argument there, of course, is then we have to just, isolate and sanction and, Russia endlessly and exclude it from the world and da da da. And, anyways, there's a line of logic there. I think that's ultimately all part of the ramping up tensions and NATO proxy war. We should go in the opposite direction. But nonetheless, now Mo, what's funny about this or interesting about it is that this is like really direct Saskatchewan, right? Because Saskatchewan's the big fertilizer, the big what's the name? I'm blanking on the name of the company. They came together, a potash core, and the other one came together, and they have a new name for it. But it's like the biggest company in Saskatoon, and a huge fertilizer company. So this is the Russians being pushed out of the market is good for Saskatchewan. So it's very self-serving, and framing it as like pro Ukrainian, but has this very self-serving element to it. But what I find interesting about it also is just the NDP jumps into it. The NDP leader jumps in and says, "I'm glad to hear strong words from the premier about these actions because up until now the response from the premier has been weak vis-a-vis Trump." Uh, uh, so basically, once Scott Moe comes out and criticizes Trump for not, maintaining the NATO proxy war, that's the one thing that the premier, the right-wing premier of Saskatchewan, will come out and criticize Trump on when it so happens to also just benefit Saskatchewan companies. So that's an interesting kind of political dynamic. The Canada-wide Peace Network criticized the coalition of the willing, the plan to send for Ukraine, the plan to send troops that the Brits are leading, and any idea of sending Canadian troops. The Canadians have left the door open for that. They also criticized in this press release the unprecedented military spending. We're seeing almost none of that. Uh, Almost no criticism. It's wild. Okay, so I on Tuesday, Wednesday, I think, I don't remember what day, I went to a press conference with Jonathan Pedino, who is the leader, the co-leader of the Greens here in Montreal, and I asked him about. I said basically all the parties have agreed to the doubling military spending from 40 to 80 billion. It's Trump that's sort of instigated this, right? It's Trump's pressure that's recharged the push to hit 2% of GDP spending on the military. And I sent that to him. I said, I'm not sure my question was actually best formulated, but I said, should we do? Does the Green Party reject this, and should we move in the direction of Mexico, which spends about half as a proportion of GDP on its military, and about half in real dollars? And he rejected it, right? He rejected it, and he wasn't like absolutely like yes, we have to hit 2% of NATO GDP tomorrow. He didn't say that, but he made it pretty clear he supported, he certainly rejected any reduction in military spending, and didn't criticize the other parties for committing to 2% and stated that NATO was important. So it was basically an endorsement. The Greens adding their voice to this push to increase military spending from 40 billion to 80 billion, which is just, I mean, it's just stunning. I mean, honestly, it's just totally fascinating. I pressed him on, he kind of said, Trump, he framed it as like, well, the Trump's threatening us and this and that. And we have to, spend military. But I was like, well, it's Trump that's pushing for the military spending. And he didn't really, he was like, no, we're doing this for our own reasons. It's not because of Trump pushing it, but it's of course because of that Trump is the instigator in this new push. I don't know that you could argue differently. And Trump is very clearly calling for Canada to increase military spending. Um, the World Socialist website, they did one of the only places criticizing NDP proposals, made in Canada rearmament plan to ready Ottawa for World War. So they do criticize it, but it's almost no criticism. It's about 2 weeks ago now, where the NDP said they hit 2%, huge increase in military, almost no one criticizing it. Now, as I did an interview, I think we talked about it this last week, but I did an interview where I flushed some of this more out with David Swanson from World Beyond War, and then I did a talk in Ottawa where I went into more of this stuff um, on the crisis in Canadian militarism. And it's totally fascinating dynamic how this is playing out, where everyone's agreeing we've got to massively increase military spending, so they should be on the top of the world, all the military types, but simultaneously there is this like collapsing of this relationship to the U.S. military, which is absolutely central to the Canadian military. So you had the general who recommended Blondin, who was considered important back in 2015, around 2015, 2012, 2015, in pushing the F-35. He came out saying in a front page, it was on the front page of the National Post, with interview with Puglisi, that the reality is that without U.S. consent, no country can hope to operate the F-35 for long. So basically rejecting, saying we should reevaluate the F-35. So he's saying that the U.S. the relationship with the U.S. is you can't trust the U.S. We shouldn't be buying all this equipment from them. So it's a huge reversal for this guy personally, but the whole ethos within the Canadian military. And so you're seeing a lot of this. Um, and I think that it's a real soft underbelly of the Canadian military, um, their relationship to the U.S., but they can't seem to hold back. So today, Puglisi has a piece headline: Canadian generals discuss military cooperation with U.S. as Trump continues to threaten Canada. And March 20th or 21st, the chief of the defense staff was in Washington, and then either the day before or the day after, the head of the Navy was there, meeting with the U.S. counterparts. Carignan, I don't know how you pronounce her name, but the chief of defense staff, she said she was honored to take part in discussions, quote, strengthening, she posted this on X, strengthening the deep bonds between Canada and the US. Our military cooperation is built on trust, interoperability, and a shared commitment to security at home and abroad. So the head of the Canadian military is saying that on either March 21st or 20th, uh, while the U.S. president is saying going to go trade war to annex the country. Unbelievable, totally remarkable. They absolutely cannot. It's so difficult for them to back away from their just like complete ties, devotion to the U.S. empire, and military and the U.S. And Pentagon. Um, so I don't know where this is going to go. I think there's a lot more that needs to be hammered on this in terms of embarrassing the military in this, because I mean, how can you argue that we need to hugely increase military spending as a defense against possible U.S. Threats, and then have a military that is just totally and utterly deferential and integrated, aligned with the U.S. It seems pretty contradictory. And I think that's why, again, that's why the F-35 deal collapsed so quickly, is because for the public and sort of, if if the ideas were buying these fighter jets for defense, and then the country that's the only country that could invade can turn the can kill the jets, what's the point? Now, of course, we know they're not actually being bought for defense reasons. The military's long known there's only one country that could realistically invade Canada, and that's the US. They're not structured to stop to stop that. They're structured to assist that country's global domination. Um, but yeah, see where that plays out. Now, shifting gears to the genocide. I saw a post today saying that only 3%, polls saying only 3% of Jewish Israelis are morally opposed to the Trump Netanyahu plan to depopulate Gaza. 14% consider it a quote distraction. I think they said 54% of the Arab Israelis or Palestinian citizens of Israel consider it morally wrong. Uh, uh, More than 80% of Jewish Israelis support the forced removal of Arabs from Gaza, Palestinians from Gaza. Pretty remarkable, but it just it fits with some other polling I've seen on this issue and similar kind of questions. The Project Plowshare has reported this week that the Canadian Crown Corporation um, agreed to or oversaw a $79 million artillery propellant contract from General Dynamics operations here in Montreal. So that's Crown Corp. That's the Canadian Commercial Corporation is the Crown Corporation that they oversee. They take on the contracts of arms deals, mostly the U.S. and um, and so while Melanie Joly is claiming there's no more arms deals to the U.S., that's a $79 million contract. It goes via the U.S., so it is, but it's Canadian operations of General Dynamic, and it happened just not long after the other General Dynamic contract here. I think it was for about 60 million for munitions, I believe. And that kind of blew up in the face of of they got a fair bit of media attention, and then Jolie promised to have it canceled. We don't know if it will. So all these promises are just like they're promises that are stated, but there's so much secrecy around all this that you don't know what's true or not. Clearly, there is not an arms embargo directed at Israel, despite the claims to that. We knew that. We knew that there was going to continue being arms via the defense production sharing arrangement via the U.S. going to Israel, produced in Canada. But this is confirmation. This is Project Plowshare's got the info from the U.S. So it's all like totally secretive. The Mivaser, David Mivaser has a piece about the head of CJA's operations in Israel. I think it's David Weinberg is his name. He attended this anti-Semitism conference in Jerusalem that basically it kind of my understanding is just collapsed. People even like the ADL, Anti-Defamation League in the U.S. pulled out because they ended up inviting the Israelis invited so many of these far right figures from um, France, from Hungary, from different European countries, from Spain. So they brought all these far right, obviously the traditional anti-Semitic crowd, and it prompted some like U.S. and British and other kind of Zionist and fairly significant serious Zionists, but kind of with a little bit of a pretense of being well, first of all, actually fighting anti-Semitism, but also a pretense of being, somewhat of, kind of mainstreamy kind of organizations in their country, and um, but that's where the head of CJ, and so he didn't just attend. He wrote this. I read about half of this. rambly, really like very rambly column he wrote about it in the Jerusalem Post. And just on an aside, I mean, this it just honestly, it's becoming clearer and clearer just how stupid Zionism really turns you into being dumb. I mean, the thing this Weinberg's piece was that it was just totally incoherent. But the thing that really got me going on this was a few days ago. I don't know if people saw on X all these Zionist influencers on X. They all made this claim that the some report suggested that the Students for Justice in Palestine at Columbia University that they like restarted their like Twitter account or Instagram account or something like that, like a couple hours before the October 7th attack from Hamas. And so what this report claims, what all these Zionist influencers claim, was that the Palestine student group at Columbia had like advanced knowledge that Hamas that Hamas was attacking. So it was like a whole swath of the political leadership of Hamas is understood to not have known, right? Hezbollah didn't know. The Iranians didn't know. Obviously, the Israeli intelligence didn't really know. Uh, but they informed the students for the students for justice at Palestine in Colombia to like restart their Instagram account because you know the attack was coming or whatever. It's just like a level of like honestly, you just don't even know what like how do you really respond to somebody who's like, oh, a huge new revelation. We've just proven that the you know the six-person student club at Columbia that has a $500 budget is you know was in you know in the discussion with Sinwar in like I mean it's just level of dumb that I don't know what to how do you process it exactly, but um the also the fascism the just it's like the Canadian Jewish News has this piece about that about Charlotte Cates and Charlotte Cates going to the funeral of Hassan Nasrallah in Beirut. You know, I guess it's about a month ago, or maybe longer. I don't know exactly when. And the headline in the Canadian Jewish News piece is "Community calls for action after Canadian director of a terror group attended the funeral of Hezbollah's leader in Beirut." And it ends it off with a quote from the conservative senator here in Montreal, Quebec. He says, "I'm just trying to figure out why she's not in handcuffs and in a jail cell." And it's just like really? Like she went to a funeral, there was like a million people there or hundreds of thousands of people there. And like that, do you really believe that just someone goes to a funeral of, even if somebody you consider like a terrorist, I don't like, I think the terrorist list is totally odious. The idea that Nasrallah is in the vicinity of any sort of immoralness that Benjamin Netanyahu is in is just beyond ridiculous. I mean, I think that Nasrallah is actually part, history will judge him as part of resistance to a you know violent European colonial project that is not only terrorized Palestinians but also Lebanese. I think that's how history will judge him. But like even somebody who's not, you know, you don't come to that conclusion. I mean, the idea that Nasrallah has, you know, vicinity of amount of blood as Netanyahu is beyond ridiculous. But and so like they're just saying, okay, just like throw her in jail. She just be in jail because she went to Lebanon. She went to a stadium with 80,000 or her. I don't even know if she was at the stadium where she was. They don't give you that much detail. And they name a whole bunch. They quote a whole bunch of like Jewish community people like saying, oh, Charlotte Cates, the world is coming down. How could our what's wrong with Canada? Not just throw her in jail and it's just this endless stream of like just totally illiberal, authoritarian. And the Canadian Jewish News is, it's not considered, it's considered like reasonable, right? And it's just totally down that path of just it's just been so many months of this authoritarianism of the dominant Jewish community organizations, dominant Jewish community voices that they don't I don't think they even see it anymore, right? It just keeps going and going and going and going. and it's playing out all over. The story about the former Montreal-based head of Médecins Sans Frontières, the story that Le Devoir published on Thursday about her talk at NYU. She was an alumni at NYU. Her talk at NYU was canceled. She goes down. There's some big, I don't know, pomp, whatever. She's obviously an important doctor, global, whatever. And she says, no, this is not a leftist, right? This is like a pretty mainstreamy kind of liberal Médecins Sans Frontières. And they shut her talk down because she like has some slides where she was gonna talk about humanitarian workers being killed in Gaza. That's it. And they said it was anti-Semitic. They shut it down because it's anti-Semitic. And this is not a Canadian example, but they're it's all like supportive of this. So in this vein, I'm going to get to this in more detail, but in this vein, the guy from the former head of JDL, I'm forgetting him, a guy in Toronto there. He has this post where he says this guy, okay, so this Afghan refugee immigrant to Canada, Wasudun Akbar, is convicted of saying that he wants to blow up synagogues. And so I'll just finish this because so the former head of the JDL saying that like he should be thrown out of the country. Okay, so just this is he's a citizen. He's a citizen, but they want to now throw him out of the country because he's been convicted. I don't know at all. I don't. My understanding that they wouldn't have any legal standing, but I really don't know. Okay, so this guy, this story is a bizarre story. Global News breaks it, I think on Tuesday. And this guy he owns a shawarma shop. He goes to a BMW dealership to get his oil changed. And amidst this, I guess while he's waiting, he goes into the actual, like, where they're selling cars or whatever, and starts talking to some sales agent or something. And the sales agent claims that he said to him that he wanted to blow up synagogues. Uh, this guy completely denies it. He denies it, in court, and then he global interviews him, and he denies it there. And the judge who finds him guilty is a man by the name of Edward Pucci. Edward Pucci. This is unbelievable that this judge does not recuse himself. Edward Pucci is a hardcore Zionist activist. Okay. He has, I wrote a piece about it, I can get all the details there, and I'm just sure I'm just touching the surface. He does an Israel bonds fundraising pitch at a synagogue in 2015. His last tweets are going to watch him taking his daughter, a photo of him and his daughter with Michael Rapaport or whatever his name is, that actor that's a total raging racist, raging Zionist fanatic. The judge is like this judge is his daughter goes to the Tannenbaum chat. His daughter's in Israel. Canadian Jewish News has an interview with his daughter in Israel after October 7th. He himself went to Tannenbaum chat. Tannenbaum chat has IDF days. It's a big private school in Toronto. Uh, he's just a whole series he's got a photo with him on his bio with Dershowitz. So the guy's a serious Israel, and his ruling against this Afghan immigrant, he refers to Israel, I think it's 32 times in the ruling, a pretty short ruling. I read the whole ruling, and the judge admits that it's all like there's no evidence that this guy stated that he was going to plan to blow up synagogues, except the sales agent. There's no video. There's video of the two of them having a conversation at the dealership. There's nothing besides this guy's word, the sales agent's word saying this guy said that. it's bizarre. It's bizarre that someone would go to some sales agent that he didn't know and so telling him that his plan was to blow up synagogues. That's bizarre. I have to say on the other side, it's bizarre that some BMW sales agent would make this up too. That's very bizarre too. So but the main issue here, I think the bigger scandal. I mean, I don't know how you know. It's there's two people had a conversation. They both didn't. They have completely different things. Explanation of what happened in the conversation. I don't know how you can piece that out with which is true and which isn't. But the main issue here is this judge will just not take himself out of the picture. Obviously he has a perception of bias in this. It's just like completely like abundant. Um, but it speaks to the fact that he would do that, not recuse himself, speaks to how Zionistic the whole legal world is. And we've seen lots of evidence of that. And I should state that this Akbar who was convicted, he seems pretty clear he didn't have proper legal representation. I think he was quite naive. It seems like he was quite naive what he got himself into. He himself called the judge racist. He called the crown and the judge a racist, which I don't see how you can't come to that conclusion when you look at what's out there on this judge. But uh, on the note of Zionist influence within the legal world, and we've seen lots of examples. And Dimitri Lascaris talked about he ended up withdrawing from the firm he was at because different lawyers were targeting the firm, and it was kind of like a campaign against the firm. But this week, a couple days ago, the I think it's called the Advocate Society, which is made up of 6,000 judges, lawyers, and advocates. Um, that it's established to ensure the presence of a courageous and independent bar. They invited um, the guy from, oh, I don't, yeah, Tariq Hadan. Uh, and this is the guy, he's like this, he was a Syrian refugee and he was like a chocolate maker and he became really prominent on chocolate. I don't call it, uh, I don't know what to call it, Canada chocolate, peace chocolate. He's he's clearly quite good at sort of marketing, this sort of liberalish kind of marketing, whatever. He became prominent person. He was invited to give this speech, this judge and lawyer advocate society thing, and then it came to light that he had referred to at some point genocide in Gaza and so they bounced him. And I looked at the guy's Twitter, and he doesn't seem. There's little evidence that there's anything. He's not. This is a very mainstreamy kind of guy. I didn't find even the Palestine comment, so he's clearly not doing it that much. Um, and so yeah, so just the level of influence and power of pro-Israel voices. And in the article, I discuss a few of these examples, that other examples we know of pro-Israel kind of judge interventions. It's pretty troubling. This judge really this Edward Prucci needs to be reprimanded, and there needs to be formal complaint against him to there's a council, the Judicial Council, that's supposed to deal with judges and not recusing themselves and all that kind of stuff. Um, on more positive note, the National Post had a piece about the Canada Revenue Agency, kind of giving it to the Neiman Foundation. The Neiman Foundation had their charitable status revoked with the JNF about 5 6 months, maybe it was in the summer, or maybe more like 8 months ago. Um, and they're trying to play some games with the money that's outstanding, and the CRA seems to be putting their foot down and seem to be taking a hard line with the Neiman Foundation, which is good. On the Indigo 11, three more people's charges were dropped. And so my understanding now is that two people pled guilty, but they expect an absolute discharge. Two others that pled guilty got an absolute discharge. And so seven of the 11 had their charges dropped. Two already had an absolute discharge, and two more are hoping or expecting that. So all that huge raid and the police like busting in doors early in the morning and huge like SWAT operation and huge amounts of money put into it, it's going to lead to like literally nothing. And this was, of course, Indigo 11 is putting up posters on Indigo Bookstore in Toronto, and they went after them for hate crimes and all this kind of ridiculousness. There's a story that claims that the Muslim, not the National Council of Canadian Muslims, but different Canadian Muslim groups did some polling, and they found that 58% of Canadian Muslims rank, quote, foreign policy in Palestine as the most important issue that will determine their vote. That sounds high to me, but this is what this group is saying their polling says. That's interesting. That's a good sign. Um, and Yeah, I went to Anna Ganey's office this week, the MP here, and I didn't expect to see her there. I was hoping I would see her, but I didn't expect it. And I kind of like tried to interview or question the manager of the office, who got very uncomfortable right away. And then I asked the volunteers making phone calls um, if they were comfortable with Ganey's support for genocide. I think we should really be doing that. It's a really simple action, takes not much time. Go to their offices, record yourself, like asking, making some comments. Make the volunteers in the whole office uncomfortable about their promotion of genocide. I have a couple other videos this week that were both lucky and decent. I got Stephen Bronfman totally by chance when I arrived very late to Carney's event, and I had my Bixie. I was on the bike still. I was like, "That's Stephen Bronfman," who was leaving early, and I had to drop my bike and I did a little clip with him. But then I had another one. It was kind of interesting. It was kind of funny. Is this Peter Schiffke? This is actually worth watching because Peter Schiffke is this liberal MP and who actually was at Concordia. He was like part of the right wing after my year, the right wing backlash. Uh, I think he might become the president of the CSU 2 years later, 3 years later. I don't remember exactly, but he's in this world, and he's been a Liberal MP for a while. I don't know exactly. I feel like a decade or something like that. He's backbencher though, and uh, and so it's after the Carney event. I have my toque on and this my hood, so he doesn't recognize me. But I walked like over 2 minutes with him, trying to get him to say it's bad to kill kids. And he refuses to say it's bad to kill kids. And it's really quite funny. Well, like the whole like just there's like a silence for a while. And anyways, it's just to see that just I mean just the fear, the fear. I don't know, like what a pathetic honestly, just I guess I don't know if I mean I don't know that this Peter Shifty character like he probably doesn't care about what happens to kids in Gaza or whatever, right? But he presented himself as a sort of liberalish kind of person in student union times, and because you don't win. There was the radical left, and then there was the left. It was like sort of I don't know what to call it, like mainstream NDPers, but I just like why would the guy be so scared to say, yeah, it's not good to kill children? It's just, yeah, it's just fascinating to watch, but it's pretty rampant. I actually interviewed this other, or kind of challenged this liberal candidate in Verdun. I didn't post it, but same thing. He just goes quiet. He just refuses to talk. And it's like they've been counseled or something like that. It's a strategy to not say anything, which maybe it makes sense based upon certain calculations. It looks really bad when you walk with somebody for 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes really, and they refuse to like say, killing children is a bad thing. It looks pretty bad. Anyways, I'll leave it at that, and I will unmute Yuri, and I will co-host Laura here. Oh, I think you can go ahead, Yuri.
Okay, no problem. Can you hear me, Eve?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Wow. I actually don't know where to start with my questions and comments because so much injustice, so much craziness going on. But well, actually, I'll talk specifically about this when it comes to the general election and the Liberal Party. I just want to first of all, I just want to say. Uh, I'm not a huge fan of Jagmeet Singh. There's much to criticize about the NDP. I've called them a diet liberal party for a long time, but I still think come general election, it would be fantastic if people broke the duopoly, which is the Liberal Party and the Conservatives, do a constructive protest vote and vote for the NDP. Or, if people really care about Palestine, the planet, then they should vote for the Communist Party of Canada. But that's a whole other issue for another day. But I was looking at your confrontations with those two liberal politicians, and I just cannot help but think, how can anybody with a conscience vote for the Liberal Party, do this stupid tactical voting of the Liberal Party when they really are the ruling party, which is responsible for this Holocaust in Gaza. And that's just tip of the iceberg when we talk about their crimes against humanity all over the world. But again, Canada is it's not like the U.S. where I can understand why people feel like they have to vote Democrat because of the scary Republicans. But in Canada, you guys can vote for the NDP. You guys can vote for en masse, do a protest vote and vote for the Communist Party. But I just find anybody who claims to care about Palestine, the planet, uh, they're doing a disservice to humanity and are spitting at the graves of Palestinians when they claim that they're going to vote for the Liberal Party. And I actually, yeah, so I just wanted your thoughts on that, and I just want to say David Suzuki was stupid for making that comment about Russia, and nobody should be moving to Canada because America is so fascist and anti-free speech when Canada is doing the exact same thing to its own students on the campuses when it comes to Palestine and so forth. So I'm curious your thoughts on that.
I think people should vote for mostly should vote for the NDP. Yeah, I think that's the. I wouldn't exclude in a riding that's an obvious conservative liberal riding. Certainly presuming that the the race is viewed as tight. I wouldn't preclude voting for a liberal candidate in certain ridings where there was like a no chance NDP. But for the most part, if your riding is if your riding is a close, my riding is a close liberal NDP. Well, the NDP is a small shot at winning it. I don't really like Machouf. She went on the Palestine boat, but she's very bad on Iran. But I plan to vote for her because it's against Guilbeault. I think she's unlikely to win, but there's a small chance. I think last one or the one before I voted for somebody in the Marxist-Leninist Party. I think I voted for because I didn't think there was any. It was like Guilbeault was guaranteed to win. But if it's a riding, that's and then if it's a liberal guaranteed win, then vote for whoever if there's very small chance then you could win anyways, and vote for if there's a Communist Party person on it, or sure do that, or other and then if I was in Elizabeth May's riding, I don't like Elizabeth May, but I vote for Elizabeth May because well, I have to look at numbers. If she wins by large margins, then maybe I wouldn't vote for Elizabeth May, but assuming her margin's not that big, I would probably vote for Elizabeth May because better her than the probably a conservative in that riding. Anyway, so it comes down to a little bit. It's distinct each riding how to make the thing. But as a general rule, yeah, I would call for people to vote for the NDP because they're the only party that's realistic shot at winning in a number of places, and
And they do respond to people power movements.
they're a bit more responsive, and obviously on Palestine now they are qualitatively different than the liberals. That's very clear at this point. They're not on other foreign policy issues. They are, I think, they're better on most domestic issues, or I would say the overwhelming majority of domestic issues.
Just on that note, Eve, do you think that given the issues with the US now, though, that that's going to be the primordial thing in people's minds when they're casting their ballot? And do they see any real difference between the liberals and the conservatives on that?
Well, that's clearly what everything's setting up. The reason why you've seen probably the most remarkable turnaround in, I don't know, maybe ever in Canadian political history, where liberals have just shot up in 2 or 3 months, it's because Carney and the liberals are viewed as better at dealing with Trump.
But why? Why are they better? Why are they perceived as
Well,
better?
because Polyev was basically what his gig was being Donald Trump, being a Canadian Donald Trump. That's part of his kind of shtick, is his sort of right. And so people are like, well, we don't want that. We don't like Donald Trump. We don't want that. And then so there, there's clearly still there's a chunk of the base of the Conservative Party that is the people. I mean, the polling is absolutely crystal clear on that. The conservatives is 20%, or it's 10% of the overall population, but 20% of conservatives that want to be join the US, right? It's just if you look at proportion of liberal voters or NDP voters, it's like 3% or 5% or 7%, it's way lower. It's 3, 4 times higher among Conservative Party supporters. And that's part of why Poilievre's had a real difficulty dealing with some of this you know, shifting gears in how he's, responding to Trump. And it's also what you see with, the that's why the Alberta leader and Scott Moe, I think to a certain extent as well. That's why they have been very sort of sympathetic to Trump, is because there's a lot of people in Alberta, Saskatchewan, the right. There's the whole, Alberta secessionist crowd. I just saw some headline. I didn't read the story, but a headline about the one of the Alberta secessionist leaders asking Trump for support or something like that. So there's like fissures among the right wing base of Polyev on a lot of this stuff, and or even more so with the Alberta and Saskatchewan kind of conservative parties. Um, whether I don't know whether I don't know like whether Carney really will be that much different or whatever, but that's the sort of perception, is that this is a guy who's, sort of he's new, he's able to challenge Trump. Whether it's true or not, I don't really know he will do that much. How much different he'd be. I don't know that Jagmeet would be that much better either on it, but yeah.
Go ahead, Yolanda.
Hi, Eve. Thanks very much again for your analysis. I'm just wondering if you've heard anything further about, because I've seen nothing about Chandra Arya in Nepean, who stepped down or was forced to step down. And I've seen nothing, but I knew from the beginning, because there had been communication with him in terms of his pro Palestine stance. And anyway, nothing's been said of it. And I just wondered if you'd heard anything. This latest is that he went to India without letting anybody know.
Yeah, that was the framing. And who was it? Was it Nadia, who might be on here? She's on sometimes. She's told me. Who came to the event in Ottawa on Friday and basically mentioned this exact point.
Mm.
I hadn't, it wasn't really on my radar. I hadn't really registered that I don't what she sent me something. She sent me an email about it. Did he support? He supported Palestine, recognizing Palestine, or
Oh yeah, he's been quite vocal in the House as well about support of Palestine.
Yeah, so he, I guess, was a liberal kind of, one of the few liberals standing up a little, bucking the official line. I mean, that makes sense. It makes sense that that would have contributed. Whether that's the full story or how what went into this, and how much of this is about Mark Carney wanting an easy seat. I don't know, and I don't know what the calculations there all are. But that would make sense that would be contributing. Has he gone public saying that at all?
No, I haven't seen anything, so that's why I wondered.
Well, people should try to press him on that. Like he may believe that, but be sort of like, these people are very cautious and all that stuff. But it would be worth like trying to get him to state that at minimum.
Yeah,
One thing I'm wondering is if with given what the US is doing now vis-a-vis Canada and tariffs and that, are you seeing anything in the mainstream press where people are making the argument that actually we should start rethinking our relationship with China, or at least our economic relationship with China, and the folly of just kind of treating them as our enemy? Do you see
Yeah,
much?
there was yeah, there's a little bit, very little bit. There was something in the Globe, I think I saw business section not that long ago. There's some pieces a little while ago, but yeah, very small amount. But it's it's the this thing about attacking Carney, Puliev attacking Carney for having had sort of business ties to China while he was at Brookfield is kind of goes against that. But Oh yeah, so the Journal de Montréal this week had a whole bunch on the Chinese electric cars. And they went at the fact that Canada had just followed the US, 4 or 5 months ago, whenever it was, to bring the 100% tariffs on the Chinese electric cars, and actually had it on they had it on the front page one day, and then they had it was in at least two issues. And then, yeah, they were sort of like basically questioning this decision to bring in these high tariffs on China electric cars, and why do we follow the Americans? Kind of, there was the sort of undertone to it. Don't remember exactly how explicit they were, but so that's a little bit of that. But no, not like a widespread. It's clearly bubbling around in business circles, right? Like I think the story that I saw. I can't remember when this was. Not very long ago, was basically saying that there's no real alternative. You can sort of say we should build up commercial relations with like other countries in Asia, and it all kind of like sounds fine, but in practical reality, if you want to diversify from the US, it's got to be with China. And the Chinese officials were um, uh, oh yeah, that was, yeah, it was on the front page of the Financial Post actually. The and it's there was the ambassador, the Chinese ambassador was reaching out on that, and he was putting the condition was that Chinese companies have to be able to can't be blocked. And I think that's around the mining stuff, but also I think even with regards to some of the auto. I'm not sure exactly what they've done with the auto, but I think they've done some stuff that's makes it a little bit difficult for Chinese electric vehicle companies even to set up operations. I'm not, don't quote me on that, but um, yeah. So the Chinese are definitely, they understand that there's this that dynamic is there, and they're trying to sort of push it. But yeah, it's not widespread. Still, I mean, still, what we're seeing with this candidate in the Toronto area is that, the hard anti-China thing is still very present in the official politics.
Before Carney became a candidate, I know this guy, Lawrence Wilkerson, he's kind of a well-known critic of American foreign policy now. He was saying that he loved the way that Carney at that time was talking about China, which was, very sane, and that they're not the enemy, they're a competitor. And he said, he actually really thought that it was very promising, his approach towards China. Anyway, I guess we can't have
Yeah,
that, and maybe.
that represents the sort of like, total upper end of global capital, right? That's what Carney, that world, they don't want this, the whole big banking world and stuff like that. They want to have a fairly they want neoliberalism. They want a sort of fairly global, capitalist kind of whatever. And yeah.
Okay. I think that's it for the questions, unless Yolanda, I saw your hand go up again. Did you have another question? If so, I'll get you to unmute if you had another question. No, I guess not.
Take care, everyone. Have a
Okay,
good
thanks,
night.
you.
Thanks.
Ciao.